Okay, right, so following on from imposter syndrome and stuff, it looks like I'm going to be talking about really complex psychological stuff. I'm not. I'm talking about how you have to try and fit all of the bits of work that you have coming in into your agency with the people that you have available. So, huzzah. Hello, my name's Sarah. I am a project manager at White October, as Brett said. Confession time, I'm also a control freak. And there's about 30 of us in the agency, and we can have between 25 and 35 active projects at any time. I am also responsible for matching the people that we have to the needs of those projects, so commonly known as resourcing. Don't like to use that because quite often the developers will be like, stop calling us resource, and I'm like, shut up, the overhead are talking about you. So resourcing for a growing agency is quite a big challenge, and everyone has different information that they need access to. Your production team need to know what they're supposed to be working on. Your project managers need to know that who and what they've got booked are going to match the needs of the project work you've got coming up. And you also need your account managers to have long-term visibility of where the gaps are, so they know what kind of work they should be chasing to try and get that in. You also need your team to be doing billable work whenever possible. Gaps in your schedule don't earn money unless you've worked out some really complex business plan that we haven't got to yet. Let me know. And things can change really fast, so from hour to hour, which can make resourcing a little bit like juggling fog. A couple of years ago, we were struggling to get to grips with resourcing our projects, and we had very little confidence that the information we were feeding into resourcing was an accurate reflection of reality. Our resourcing was run via a big old spreadsheet. Holly, you probably remember this one. And it's sort of a one day to one project kind of thing going on. The PMs would meet with the head of production once a week, most weeks anyway, occasionally it got bumped, to try and predict what time each of us needed across each of our projects, and it was kind of based a little bit on guesswork. The big spreadsheet also had a few drawbacks, so predicting time in whole days is really hard and quite high risk. And the work quite often didn't materialise at the right time, so the day it was booked in for. People were quite often working on 2 or 3 projects a day, not just the one. And things changed quicker than once a week in most agencies, so a once weekly meeting wasn't really enough. And that meant that the spreadsheet was quite often out of date, and therefore quite often got ignored. So in reality, things were pretty ad hoc, pretty chaotic, and the process was invisible to the rest of the agency. And this was kind of identified as a problem by the management team, and they decided to try and fix resourcing. Having seen the way my brain worked with like Jira tickets and remembering and talking to developers in numbers rather than words, the first thing they asked me to have a go at fixing it, and the first thing I did was ban the use of the word fix. With resourcing, it's not a simple case of finding a fix and then it just works, and it doesn't look after itself. It's an ongoing process, and it's one that we're trying to improve all of the time. So I'm just going to take you through a few of the things that we changed straight away from the big old spreadsheet. We switched to using Forecast, which is a bit of resourcing software. Other software is available. With this, so this is a view of our web team. With this, you can add tags and filters. You can drag and drop bookings around. You can add notes rather than just the client name of what somebody's working on, link to Jira tickets, that kind of thing. You can add in company-wide holidays, and you can easily see when people are off. So this was the few weeks leading up to Christmas. And it just made it a little bit easier to see gaps, and you can also see where people were over capacity, so the red squares. This is the team view. There's also a project view, which allows you to see, can help you plan phases or dependencies if you've got the whole team across a project, and you can also shift the whole timeline in that view as well. For us, Forecast also links to Harvest because they're made by the same people, which is our timesheeting software, and that allows you to see if the resources you've got booked in are going to take you over budget. So this is the one-person detail view. And instead of one project per day, we can now be much more granular about the number of things somebody might be working on. This one's a bit unusual because it's one of our contractors who's across a few different projects. Other people will have sort of big, long bookings for when they're on a project for a length of time. And our projects are also colour-coded. So orange is a client project, green is support, blue is internal. There's a few other colours. The grey ones are placeholders, and they get converted to the right colour when the work's been confirmed. But if it needs a particular developer, then you can sort of reserve that person, and you know you've got to try and get that firmed up. We also introduced a medium-term resourcing view for the next 6 to 8 weeks, and that's exported from Forecast. Red is empty, green is fully occupied, orange is over capacity, and we know we've got to do something to sort that out. This gets updated weekly and is shared with the management and the project managers' teams, and is always kept in the same place so people can go and look at it whenever they need to. And this also gets reviewed in, we added a resourcing review slot to our Monday ops meeting. One of the really important things we did was explain the new process to the rest of the team, so the wider team, especially to know where they should be looking, to know what they should be working on. So somewhere between JIRA or Forecast or asking a PM, our team were now able to find out what they should be working on if they didn't already know. So those are the few things that we changed straight away. And we made one other change, which was that all of the production and the PM team's annual leave requests now came via me. So I could check for clashes. We didn't have both our mobile devs off at the same time or too many of the same role. This has the added quirky bonus that I can approve my own holiday. Winning. So what happens now, a couple of years on? We've added a resourcing scrum 3 days a week with the tech director, the creative lead, and our head of client services. And we scrum around this, what we call the brain space board. So this is the number of things somebody might be thinking about, even if they're not actually working on it that day. And this allows us to monitor for too much context switching or overload, which can impact productivity or worse, lead somebody to just completely freak out. We now look at our future capacity versus requirement versus revenue, and sometimes there'll be a clear overspend and we'll know why. So like a red box up there might be that we're part funding a project or we're invested in it. And other times you'll get a red box and you know that the resource required to get the job done doesn't match what we're currently expecting to get paid for it. And that might present an opportunity to go back to the client either to reduce the scope or increase the budget or just have a really awkward conversation. So it's pretty standard stuff, but we are trying to make sure we're not sleepwalking into discounting by only finding out after the event that something's overrun, and that we're able to recruit contractors to increase our capacity where necessary. So that each of these layered views of resourcing gives a detailed picture, and anyone can look at whichever layer they need to. The medium-term forecasting also allows us to set lead times for each discipline based on real availability. So the sales team will know how far out they're looking before they can start a new type of project. So we've added the resourcing scrum 3 days a week. We look at future resourcing against revenue against capacity, and we have lead times per discipline. And the result of all of this is our utilisation is now over 80% most months. Sometimes it's higher than that. And I can still approve my own holiday. So what have we learned from the last 2 years? Visibility and communication are the key. Within project teams, between your PMs and AMs, with your clients, with your support. Having all of these different layers of information about resourcing is no good if nobody looks at it or it's out of date. And stuff changes all of the time, really fast, and you have to make sure that all of the people that are affected by any of that are aware, and that requires having a broad overview of everything that's happening across the agency. As a PM in particular, you also have to be really careful not to fall into the literal trap. Just because it's booked in forecast doesn't mean it actually happens. You've still got to do all the normal stuff of going and talking to people and chasing things up. And the other thing we've learned, it's not just about the numbers. And I quite frequently have to remind myself that it's not just my own massive personal game of Tetris. And one of the things we've discovered, especially when we're really busy, is that people aren't robots. Disappointing. Most people can't run at 95% for months at a time. Mistakes increase, people get sick, things get a little bit antsy. And there's no slack for when something unexpected happens, whether that's a server crash or a critical security release, somebody gets ill, that Seagull special project that drops in from nowhere and has to start immediately and drives a truck through the rest of your plans. And to be able to respond to all of those types of things, you need to have a little bit of contingency built in. If you want to retain your customers, so the people you've already worked with and want to build up longer-term relationships with, you've got to remember to leave time for supporting those projects after they've reached the end of the main project phase, particularly if you don't have a separate support team. Don't back-to-back your project work, new project work, so tightly that you no longer have time for your existing customers. Don't fill your containers. Keeping people comfortably busy takes quite a lot of communication, visibility of what's happening, and quite often a healthy dose of stubbornness from somebody like me to resist the temptation to try and cram more work into the month. What else have we learned? Sometimes the work is dull. You can't get around that. We try and mix things up for people, so if somebody's spent a few months working on support or maintenance, we'll try and give them the next new exciting project that comes up to take them out of their comfort zone. Equally, some people like their comfort zone. It's comfortable. If someone's been struggling on a tough project for a while, we'll see if we can give them something slightly easier to build their confidence back up. Sometimes people are too busy to think clearly, and that's a real problem. We try to minimise context switching wherever we can. For us, more than 2 to 3 projects a day starts raising warning flags, and you really want people on no more than two different things in any given day. One thing we have discovered is that doesn't really work for AMs or PMs. You know, we're sort of across everything more often, and you'd spend more time updating your bookings in forecast than you would actually doing the work. And sometimes managing clever people is just hard. So we've talked a few times at this conference and in previous ones about, the balance between autonomy and booking. So keeping all of the plates spinning for your clients, helping to win new work and whilst delivering on existing projects. And that's the constant challenge. And there's some other stuff we know we haven't got right yet. What we have called high traffic people. So these are the people that have a lot of meetings. So whether it's a CMS team lead or a creative director, they've got so many meetings in their calendar that actually, where you think you've got them for a full day on a project, doesn't happen. You've got so many meetings, they've not actually got enough time to be counted as a full-time team member on a project. And the other thing that we're really looking at the moment is our utilisation doesn't equal revenue, doesn't equal the time remaining. So quite often there's a mismatch between how busy we feel, predicted revenue, and the actual time to complete a piece of work. And this is our key focus at the moment. So, recap of things we've learned. Communication and visibility are the key, and resourcing is a team game. The conversations around juggling priorities, getting feedback from the team about the kind of work they want to be doing, and your timescales, really important. Don't fill your containers. Leave space for support or the unexpected. Try and listen to your people as well, and try to minimise the context switching, but also watch out for boredom. As Rand says, bored people quit. And your resourcing needs constant attention, but little and often actually makes that easier. Keep on top of it, don't let it build up, but it's never done. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. That's great. I think resourcing is probably a challenge for a lot of people in this room who deal with it. Does anyone have any questions? Can we get the mic back up here in the very back?
Hi. Have you ever struggled just to keep your team motivated? And if you do, you have any tips or any?
Sorry, say that again?
Just to keep your team, basically, on your teams, just motivated.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to realise the difference between my role doing resourcing and figuring out all the different things and where they fit, and the role of the PMs on the other projects in saying, well, we've got this time now. How do we make the best of that? And they're kind of two separate things. So the PMs will sit together and work out what they need roughly and who they need, and then it kind of is like, well, that team's got that piece of work to do, that team's on that piece of work, and then it goes back to the project team to be able to get through what they need to get through and plan the best way that they can to get that work done.
One right over here.
Hi, Sarah. Firstly, fantastic talk. Thank you very much. The journey you're going through in White October is very similar to the journey we're going through at Ridgeway right now. I have 2 questions for you. The first one is, can you expand on the relationship between yourself and your sales team? For example, do they get involved in the scrums you mentioned? And the second question I've got is, if your role is a scheduling role, but also a project management role, what is the ratio between those two? How much time do you spend on your projects and how much time do you spend resourcing?
Okay. So first question around the sales team, the client services manager will come to the scrum, and we also have so Mondays tend to be our sort of ops meetings where we're straightening out, and that's also got a sales and pipeline type meeting first thing Monday morning, and that kind of feeds into the resourcing requests. We have a resource request Slack channel where people say, I need this type of developer for some estimates, or I need this type of team for this project I've got coming up. So we're kind of just talking all of the time about that sort of thing. And quite often you will get to 2 members of the sales team will say, well, I've got this project that needs that person, and I've got this project that needs that person. and you just put them in a room and let them fight. No, not really. You have to sort of have a conversation as that sort of that ops team, PMs, AMs, sales, the sales team, to try and work out where's the priority, can we fit both of them in, do we need extra resource, and it's just sort of an ongoing conversation, really. Remind me of the second question.
This is the point I can't my microphone away, so I'll shout it out. What's the split between your resourcing responsibilities and project managers?
So it varies. And I've got a very cool graph somewhere, because I'm a bit geeky like that, which shows the number of projects that we have in and the amount of time resourcing, and at a certain point they cross over. So when you've got lots of big projects in, there's less work on resourcing because everything's sort of settled. If you've got lots of little projects in, then the time I have to spend sort of straightening things out increases. And sometimes it will just be right, those are the two PMs that need those two resources, you guys sort it out, let me know what you've come up with. In terms of forecast, all of the PMs can update it, and they can just have conversations between themselves, and things will change. But I'm pretty much in there looking at it all the time, every day, just so I know what's happening, and I've got that kind of, I'm fortunate I've got that kind of brain that remembers that kind of detail. So, but I'd say in terms of average time, it's probably about 20% of my week, something like that.
We'll do one more question.
Should I just say it?
Oh, she's got the mic right behind you, sorry.
Thank you. So we're in the middle of sort of calculating out our capacity, and just sort of your opinion, what utilization rate are you working for your employees? Sort of how many hours a day are you assuming they're actually working? Because no one works 7.5 hours a day.
That's true.
There's always the cheeky Facebook check.
So I had a whole slide in there about that, and I took it out because it was just like 6 hours, 5.5 hours, 7.5. So we are contracted 7.5 hours a day. We typically expect people to be logging 6 hours billable a day, assuming that we have been able to provide them with billable work for those 6 hours. So we sort of allow an hour and a half around the day for, internal meetings, for making a cup of tea, all the other human type stuff. But when it comes to working out sort of day rates and that kind of thing, that can be any number of different calculations depending on which way the wind's blowing that particular day. So 6 hours is our sort of standard, what we're working out on what we expect people to be doing on a day. And then our capacity for the month, where we're doing the future capacity versus revenue versus income stuff, is we sort of figure that at about 80%. So we add up all of the capacity of the people across the team and then just do it times 0.8. So there's a little bit more flex in there, a bit of contingency for something that may go wrong.
All right, another round of applause for Sarah. Thank you.